It's tea time. Too cold for golf? Well, it must be tax time. And that's what we're talking about today. Taxes and the rules of taxes for entrepreneurs. Actually, for small business, medium business, and large business across the board. It is incumbent upon every size business to legally, the operative word, legally avoid paying as many taxes as possible. I'm Jim Sindoma. This is Risky Business on the Industrial Observer Network, and I'm going to show you how to stay out of trouble with the IRS. A lot of people say, well, what is it that you actually do? And I say, well, I'm an entrepreneur. What I actually do is team building. So I have an IRS defensive team, I have a marketing team, I have a manufacturing arm. All these teams contribute to the overall health of the company. You have to have your team in place before you get the notice from the IRS. So that means you want to have an accountant, a bookkeeper, an IRS lawyer, and yourself as part of the team. So the bookkeeper has to keep the daily transactions of your business accurately. Then they can provide those quarterly to your accountant. And a lot of entrepreneurs, they wait until it's tax time and they don't talk to their accountant prior to that. You want to be speaking with your accountant all the way through and getting their take, because the IRS changes the rules all the time. But the rules for your defensive team stay the same. And those rules are to legally avoid paying taxes. So how do you do that? So you want to keep meticulous records of all your expenses, everything you do that is deductible. You want them to be tracked and traceable to everything. Then you want to have your IRS lawyer, someone who has experience dealing with the IRS. You want to have him already on board with power of attorney. So when you get that letter in the mail that says, we have some questions and we'd like to audit you, you can fill out the paperwork. As soon as you get that, you fill out the paperwork right away, and you can check the box that you dispute it and you want to take it to the next level. And you flip that right over to your IRS attorney. Now, before you do that, there's something to consider. Let's say you get a letter from the IRS that says, hey, we audited your books and we think you owe us $2,500. Now, here's a decision point. And for me, the decision is anywhere from $2,500 to the far end of $5,000. I have to decide whether I just want to sit down and write a check for $2,500, $3,500, or $5,000. And you might say, well, Jim, why would you do that? And I'd say, because if I'm going to dispute $2,500, so I'm going to flip it over to my lawyer, I guarantee you it's going to be $2,000 for me to chase $2,500, plus my time, back and forth, and plus any additional fees that come along with that. And this leads me to a good point. When you get that letter in the mail that says you owe us $2,500, the clock starts ticking. So if you let it sit on your desk for a month before you respond to that, that's 30 days worth of interest, 30 days worth of late fees. Now, another point, if you decide that you want to make payments to the IRS, you need to rethink that. That is the worst thing in the world that you can do, because the IRS, their payment agreement, something like this. Let's say they decide that you can make $500 a month payments. Let's say you owe them $10,000. And you figure, okay, I can do that. The fine print when it comes to the IRS goes like this. You miss one payment and it all goes back to the beginning. They're worse than a loan shark. In fact, they make the mob look like milk-fed puppies. So if you are $10,000 in debt to the IRS and you make your payments up to $7,500 and you miss a payment, it all goes back to 10 grand with interest and fines on top of that. So be very, very careful. In fact, avoid doing it at all. Go borrow 10 grand, put it on your credit card, and pay the IRS off immediately. The other thing is, a couple of things about the IRS. They cannot come to your premise and just flip a card down and says, hey, I'm from the IRS and I want to see your business. You don't have to invite them in. You can just say, here's, and have your lawyer's card, part of your defense team. Say, here's my lawyer. He has the power of attorney. Everything goes through him. It's important. As far as the accounting goes, you want an accountant that can guide you through an IRS audit rather than preventing you from being audited. Now let me explain. Back in '97, I bought a business and the owner said, hey, you may want to consider keeping my accountant on board. He's pretty good. And I said, okay, I'll speak with him. So I went down and had a conversation, and over coffee, I asked the question, give me a reason why I should continue having you as my accountant. And he said, well, in 23 years of handling the books and the taxes for the business that you bought, I've never been audited. Now that was a red flag for me, because if you're doing things right with your taxes over a period of time like that, the chances of you being audited are pretty good. If you go 25 years in business and you've never been audited, you're paying too many taxes. You're paying too high. And the best way to avoid an audit is to overpay your taxes. The best way to get into bankruptcy is to overpay your taxes. So you want to avoid an accountant who thinks by overpaying your taxes, that's the cost to avoid an audit. You don't want to avoid an audit. You want to be prepared to respond flawlessly and get your way through an audit. And the only way you're going to do that is to have your IRS defense team in place. So, I've been audited by more than one IRS agent, and they don't like to go to court. And they will tell you that when they go to court, they always win. And in a way, that's true. So when I went to court, and here's the thing, I mentioned at the top of this conversation to have meticulous records. I showed up with meticulous records. The judge ruled in my favor. And I'm thinking, oh, I won that. And the IRS says, okay, we're going to dismiss this case. And what they mean by that is that they are going to tag the case uncollectible. Now that means that they're going to quit harassing me and they're going to let me go about my business. So they'll actually have you sign a piece of paper that you agree it's uncollectible. But if you read the fine print, it says that while it's in the uncollectible file or designation, interest rates will continue to be accrued. So if you've got, let's say you owe the IRS $100,000. That $100,000 could turn into $500,000. So in the eyes of the IRS, they've never lost it. They just need to wait for you to inherit some money or to win the lottery, and they will be right there, and they will take it all. Because now it's $100,000 plus interest, plus fines, fees, penalties, and whatever it is, they'll take it all. And then they'll have still another balance that you owe because that's the way they work. Now, for those of you who know me, I'm a big fan of case study and examples. So a really good one is to read the biography, the life and times of Joe Louis, the boxer. And if you're a boxing fan, many people will say, why did he fight way past his prime? And the reason for that is the IRS was constantly there. So he would fight, and whether he won or lost, they would be there to take his purse. So he would fight, and he didn't get any money. The IRS just took his purse. And they would have taken it until he died if it wasn't for the Rat Pack. And that is Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Joey Bishop. Who else was in it? Sammy Davis Jr. So they saved Joe Louis. And what they did is they brought him into Vegas. Frank Sinatra put him up in a suite. He paid for it. He picked up all his expenses, and just to frustrate the IRS. And it's interesting because, and you can find that DVD in pretty much any library, or you can probably find it online. And they talk to the IRS agents, and the IRS agents are upset because they got foiled. It's really interesting. So check that out. Put your IRS defensive team in place. Make sure you got a lawyer who has experience dealing with the IRS, an accountant who works with your lawyer, a bookkeeper who understands how meticulous it is to keep records. And one other thing. I have one credit card, has my company name on it, Sterling Innovations Group. Everything I do gets put on that card. So that's another check and balance. I don't put anything else on that card except business deductible items. Now, early on, I think the first time I got it audited, it was the first time. I only had one car, and I put 45,000 miles on in 1 year, getting my business up and running. Kicked me right up to the IRS. The IRS said, we're going to audit you, and they said, well, I had all my papers. This is how much money money I put into gas, the mileage, here's how I travel and all that stuff. And they said, is it a company car? And I said, well, I only have one car. And they said, well, okay, the most that we can allow you is 12,000 miles at that time, 12,000 miles a year. So right off the bat, now I owe them, I owe money because I didn't have that deductible. So had I had two cars and one of them was just for business alone, that would have been okay. So keep these things in mind. You want to have a car that you use solely for business, a credit card that you use solely for business. You may even have to have your name on the side of it to satisfy them. Your clothes, if your business requires you to wear a uniform for some reason, then that is deductible. All these things you want to make sure are traceable, because the one who shows up in court with the best paperwork wins. So keep in mind, you want to legally avoid paying as many taxes as you possibly can, because you want to keep your money, because government's going to waste your money. So if anybody's going to waste it, it should be you. So with that said, risky business out.